Okay, it says we are live. Hello. We're coming live just so I can copy the link and put it over in our event page. And wait for everybody to get here.
Sounds good.
So let's see. Does it show us live? Oh, it does show us live. So let me. Ooh, I just reheard us say that. So, and I'm going to throw this link over here in our event. So people in the event will see it. And let me put it one more place. How's your week been?
It's been all right. Thank you. I worked on a proposal yesterday and just trying to move things along.
Awesome. Okay. I am turning all that stuff off now. Okay. So let's give it another minute. Hopefully someone will let us know when they arrive and tell us where you are from once you do arrive. That would be awesome. We are streaming live to both LinkedIn and YouTube this time because last time I only streamed to LinkedIn Live, and I was like, oh, it'd be nice to have it in another place too. So I have a YouTube channel for my Sales 911. Oh, someone said good morning. Good morning. Oh, I can't. Good morning. It just says LinkedIn user for me. Oh, we've got someone from Boulder, Colorado. That's awesome.
Hello, Boulder.
I think maybe we got Stephanie from Rhode Island. That's awesome.
Hi, Stephanie.
We are, you know what? Maybe I'll pull up LinkedIn over here and just mute so that I can actually see the comments, who they're from. StreamYard actually doesn't give me the name of the person commenting unless their like LinkedIn control says you can always see who the person is. So that's sort of interesting. That like for other people who are thinking about going live on LinkedIn, that's actually a variable. I'm able to see all of the comments, but I'm not, if it's not someone who has like their controls turned on to be able to see them publicly, then it doesn't tell me their name. So Sam Steinberg from New York is here, and Dinesh from India. That's awesome.
Hi, Dinesh. Hi, Sam.
So we will, we'll just go ahead and get started. I am so glad that you're joining me. This is Anjali, and she is joining me to tell me a story about a cold call. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself for those folks who don't know you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anjali Purkayastha, and I am the co-founder of Predictively.pro. Basically, we are a technology and methodology to help companies hire the best salespeople, which I think we all know is really hard. So,
very hard.
Yeah, and I'm coming to you from Washington, and if I turned you around, you would see Mount Rainier. So, a little about me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing the story. I know this is, you know, I shared a story last week that was a little vulnerable because I didn't want anyone to feel like they should come over here and share stories with me that's a little vulnerable unless I was willing to do it, right? So I really appreciate you doing this. And so we're going to talk about a cold call, and I'd love to hear about what happened.
Thank you so much, Jen. And I loved your story last week and how vulnerable you were. It was very inspiring and made me feel confident to come on here today. So this is my worst cold call horror story. So earlier this year, when COVID had just hit, I was calling a list of restaurant owners and I sold hiring software. So I cold called a restaurant owner and he picked up the phone by saying, "Why is there a long Indian name on my caller ID?" And I was floored. He said it in the rudest, meanest voice I had ever been talked to during a cold call. And I've been doing this for years, and nobody had ever talked to me like that. And I immediately started trying to defend myself. I think I was just shocked. And I said that I was born in Texas, which is true. I'm half Indian and half white, and I have a California accent because I grew up in California. And it took him a few minutes to put together that, number one, my name is Anjali Purkayastha. Number two, I have a California accent. And number three, I was calling from a legitimate company and it wasn't an IRS scam or something. And
yeah, that must have just been shocking. Like in that moment, how did it like make you feel?
It made me feel almost defensive and competitive at the same time. I felt this rush of energy that I wanted to show him that I was a professional and my company was professional, even if he could not behave professionally himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of his job is to interact with businesses and evaluate new technology and, be polite when he answers the phone when he's representing his business.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was a pretty clear-cut case of racism towards me. And I really wanted to turn the call around. I really wanted to get him to a demo. And so I tried to just engage with him and build a rapport, even though I was so floored at first. And, we kind of got through like, okay, I'm calling from Efficient Hire. It's a real company. You've heard of it. That the name on your caller ID is my name. And I had never really thought very hard about having my name on my caller ID. I make calls from my cell phone because a lot of the time I'll take the conversation to text. And I just had never really thought about it. Like we had thought a lot about my name on my email, and we had experimented with email open rate based on what my email name was, but I hadn't thought about it for cold calls.
Mm-hmm. And so as a sales professional who, obviously you're trying to get meetings and trying to get people into your pipeline, there's that additional pressure of needing to meet your goals, knowing that you have to make the most out of every person who like literally picks up the phone because, you don't get a lot of people picking up the phone. Sometimes you're making lots of phone calls without anyone answering. Mm-hmm. So, how did you handle that part? Like you continued the conversation, but where did it go? I'm curious to hear that part.
You're absolutely right. And I really didn't want to scrap the lead. Things were really hard at the beginning of coronavirus. And I knew that if I decided to scrap the lead, my company would support me. But I didn't want to do that. And I really wanted to show him how professional I could be and almost make him feel bad for acting worse than I did. Mm-hmm. And we really turned the call around. And it turned out he had his own professional history of cold calling. And we had this really good talk about how if you make 30 cold calls, you're likely to book a demo if you do your research, which I have found to be true in my profession. And he asked for an email, which, we never love having to send people to email, but I sent him an email, and this is the best part of the story. At the end of the call, we talked for probably 10 minutes. He felt the need to apologize to me and tell me that he was not a white nationalist. And nobody has ever explained to me before that they were not a white nationalist to justify how they treated me. And
wow.
Yeah, I just had to laugh. I don't know. But I was really mad when I got off the phone. And the first thing I did was tell my manager, I had an amazing manager, Nick
Mhm.
Ryan, who is just a wonderful person. And he was so supportive. And he was really funny. He accepted that I wanted to get this person to a demo, but he was
Mhm.
like, we're not going to discount for him. If you don't discount for racists.
Oh. And what was his name? Nick?
Nick. Yeah, Nick
Nick.
is
Shout
amazing.
out to Nick, who's an awesome manager. That's great.
He was fantastic. And I was so mad that I actually posted about it on LinkedIn that day. I didn't call the person out by name because that's just kind of not my style. But
Mhm.
I just posted about, I think I was pretty proud that I turned it around and that I thought I was going to eventually have a shot at getting him to demo.
Mhm.
But what was really cool was my CEO actually commented on my post and was super supportive. And it was just a really nice moment with my company that they would be so supportive when I experienced that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now, we do have a comment here from Catherine. Trying to find professionalism in the face of serious unprofessional racism is an admirable path, though one you should not have to find, which I 100% agree with. I mean, when people are answering their phone at a business as part of their job, I mean, just the courtesy one would expect. Um, it's shocking that that would even happen to you, and to actually have a conversation where, the term white nationalist is even used is, to me, just like bizarre in a business setting. Like,
It was wild. And you could tell that he felt ashamed of himself by the end of that call because
mhm,
once I had my initial reaction of, hey, I was born in Texas, like, calm down. I really tried to just get a grip on my own temper and treat him as professionally as I wished he had treated me. And
mhm,
he did feel a little shamed. About a month later, I called him again. Um,
mhm,
I think by then we were past the shutdown in his state, I believe. And he actually took my call. He remembered me. He read my email. He still had a lot of his staff furloughed, so he wasn't going to buy hiring software. But
mhm.
we had another good conversation. And I do feel that we had a rapport, and he felt like he at least owed me courtesy after what initially happened.
Yeah. So we named this episode, your name, asset or liability. So how do you feel about that interaction now? Some time has passed and you've moved on to a new role, and how do you feel about it in general? Just, I
Um,
feel like you're very well known on LinkedIn. You're building your brand, and we see you out there bringing like valuable content. Just, what are your thoughts?
Thank you so much for that. Well, when I started job hunting again, I really wanted to sell to either sales or marketing leaders because I knew that if I did that, I would be able to use my LinkedIn brand and that my name would be a liability and not an asset because people will have seen my posts. And that's not true for every industry. Um,
Mhm,
and I knew that I had this amazing network of salespeople. And I thought, if they all know my name
mhm.
is so distinct, and my name can really work for me instead of against me if I take a job where I can help sales leaders. And also, I just felt that I understood them better than I understand restaurant owners. Like I sold to restaurant owners for years and I feel I have a grip on the industry, but I've never run a restaurant myself, right? But I have
Mhm.
run a sales team.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, 100%. There's a comment here from Christine too. One would hope that the call was a big lesson and wake up call for this guy, and he needs to change his approach to receiving cold calls. Well, I would certainly hope so as well. I mean, you
mhm.
can't have that happen and then use the term white nationalist during a phone call and then want to do that again. I would assume. Um, At least that's what my hope would be. We've got another comment from Michelle. You were a gift for him. He certainly needed that lesson. And I agree. I think he probably learned something from that as well. What do you think? Do you think he learned something?
I think he probably learned something about not immediately being rude and making assumptions. I could have been anybody. I could have been, I don't know, a different person at a bank he wanted a loan from. It could have been anybody. But I think he learned something about not immediately being a jerk right off the bat.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. Catherine asked a question here. Can you share an example when the racism was less overt, how you handle those situations?
Yeah. Well, so the first company I was in sales and marketing at was in Devia Accounting, and our operations team for the accounting was in India. So I think because I had to qualify people out who couldn't work with India, I never realized when the racism was about me and not about my team. But I do recall times when people would tell our sales team that we were part of the problem in America because of the outsourcing and stuff like that. And I think that company experienced some general racism that wasn't so much about a particular person, but about an overall theory of how countries should be. As far as times with me when racism was less overt, I have thought a lot about that this year. And there have been times when I would suspect there was some racism, but I would feel like maybe I'm just crazy. And this year, with everything we've been learning about diversity and Black Lives Matter and all of that, I realized that, it was always real. It was never in my head. But sometimes it is even something like somebody refusing to put in the effort to learn my name. Even after being like repeatedly corrected, and this has only happened a few times, but I think it's a way to make me feel small. And that has been really interesting, especially when it's somebody who's in a position of power over me. And I no longer will work for people who won't, at least put in the effort to learn my name. Like one of the most amazing managers I ever worked for got my name wrong once in my initial interview. And this was a big time trader who was a very, very prominent in his industry. And that was the last time he mispronounced my name. And he really put in the effort.
Yeah. And and that's what it takes. If you really want to get to know someone and you want to build a relationship with them, whether they're on your team or even from like relationship building in sales, learn their name. I mean, it's not, to me, doesn't seem that difficult, but
my last name
that's
is
why I think this story is important. Well, yeah. As we tested, right? But I think it's important, that we're trying to build good relationships, and that we're, as we bring in more diversity, that we're respectful of everyone. And that includes understanding how to say their name and being respectful that, there are some differences, and that's okay. And that's great and to be celebrated. So that's awesome. I remember there was also a story that you shared on LinkedIn about your name during the recruiting process. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I was a director of sales and marketing at a non-SaaS, non-VC backed company for years. And I eventually left and I started job hunting after a while. And I didn't think it would be so hard to get even an SDR job in SaaS, but I would send these applications and they just didn't do anything. And a recruiter eventually told me that he thought it was because of my name. And I'm sure there were other issues. I think in SaaS, we often want people who went straight from college to SaaS. But having a recruiter confirm that he had had companies behind closed doors tell him to only bring him white men and not to bring him people who had a difficult name was really eye-opening for me. And I've heard this from a few different recruiters now. And I think part of it is the sales leaders sometimes worry about the racism of buyers. and
Mm-hmm.
that buyers will not buy from somebody who has a name they can't pronounce. And maybe there is some truth to that, given the story I told earlier. But one thing that did happen after I shared that cold calling story was I had this outpouring of messages from other people of color telling me about their racism they had experienced. And
Mm-hmm.
it was honestly more than I had realized, especially from other Indians. And it really moved me. So now I do try to help job seekers whenever I can, especially the ones that have a difficult name that need to get more creative in their outreach.
Oh, of course, of course. And this is a topic that I talk about a lot as well, that culture fit versus culture add. You know, the culture fit, that Forbes definition of that tribal meaning of, you know, they look the same, they talk the same, they live the
Mhm.
same way, they're the same, to, you know, someone different, you know, whether it's a different background, a different culture, just something where they bring something unique to the table that's different than everybody else, to bring in that diversity of thought and to start embracing and celebrating our differences. Because companies that want to live in a global world, right? The world is a whole lot bigger and there's a lot of different people in it. And embracing our global world is important. So yeah, Catherine's got a nice comment here as well. Let me show you this one. This is Catherine says, power move definitely used by insecure people to make others feel small. It is true. You know, someone using their power to basically make you feel small is just, it's not inclusive, and it's not, um, someone who does something like that is not necessarily a great person to work for.
No, because that's not somebody who's going to be open to your ideas. And I've been really fortunate that most of the people I've worked for have been open to my ideas and have been secure enough to not need to diminish me. But
Hmm.
I have definitely encountered people like that. And, you know, I think I've been pretty lucky to mostly avoid it. It
Yeah.
is a real problem, though, especially in sales.
Yeah. Do you think that with everything that's going on this year and everyone's bringing more awareness to these stories, and that we're being more vocal and talking about it, do you feel positive for the future, that change is ahead of us?
I do feel positive for the future. And I think that I've seen in myself that I'm no longer willing to be silent. And part of it is because so many of us are being so vocal that it no longer even seems like an option for me to be silent. And I have to say, I have so much admiration for the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, and they really inspire me and show me that things are going to get better. Um,
Hmm.
we've talked a lot about racism on LinkedIn this year. And when the conversation first initially started, I wasn't sure that I belonged in that conversation, but I was seeing that I really do, and that the place where I don't belong is silence.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. You know, you just can't be quiet anymore. You know, if you see something, you need to say something, and it's,
Mhm.
you know, it's just what needs to happen. So,
Mhm.
well, I think this has been amazing conversation. Catherine has another comment here. Let's see, I'm so glad you're sharing your stories. People feeling alone with the things that perpetuate racism, sexism, ageism, etc. I think that's true. You know, that's something that, as these sorts of things happen, you do feel alone, right?
Mhm.
And I know for me, when I've experienced the sexism and some ageism, you know, it makes me feel really alone, with no one, like nobody else is going through it, when in reality, lots of people are going through it. And it's not until we get these stories out there that we really know who is, who's feeling the same way and who's having the same struggles. So any final thoughts from you on for this episode?
Well, this has been great. And to your last comment, I think there are so many kinds of bias, and I completely agree with you about the sexism and ageism as well, in addition to, gender identity, sexual orientation, all of these things. And I think the only way it really changes is that we have each other's backs and believe in each other and build a real community. And I think that's what people are really trying to do.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, we live part of a global world and it's a global community, and we need to support one another and be there for each other. Let me see. Catherine says, shared another place. You don't belong in silence. Great mantra. That's true. So thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate it. I appreciate your trust in sharing your stories here, and bringing the conversation to me. I really appreciate it, and that you are willing to not be silent and say this. This happened. This happens, and make more people aware of it. I think that's so important, so brave, and I so appreciate you.
Chen, thank you so much for having me on your show. I loved your story last week and how vulnerable you were, and it really helped me find the courage to come on the show live this week.
Well, yeah, we're episode number 2. So, and next week we've got Gabrielle joining us to talking about embracing your ambition. So that should be an exciting conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
I can't wait to see her show. Thank you.
Thank you.